When my parents told me they couldn't help with my cancer treatment bills because they'd invested in my brother's future, I felt something inside me break. Not just crack, shatter completely. Remember standing in their kitchen, my hands trembling as I clutched the medical statement showing the $43,000 I still owed after insurance. My mother couldn't even look me in the eye, and my father just kept repeating, Jason needed our help. He's starting a business. A business. That's what they called it. My name is Emily Matthews, and this is the story of how I discovered my family had two entirely different definitions of love, and how I finally made them see the truth. Growing up in Connecticut, I always knew Jason was the favorite. 3 years younger than me, he somehow commanded all the attention in any room. His baseball games were family events. His C+ grades were celebrated while my academic achievements were simply expected. When he got into community college after barely graduating high school, my parents threw him a party. When I graduated summa cum laude from Boston University, I got a card with a $50 Amazon gift card, but you normalize these things. You tell yourself that's just how families work. Someone always gets the short end of the stick. I'd built my own life anyway. At 32, I had a decent job as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized firm in Boston. Not glamorous, but stable. I had good friends, a small but comfortable apartment, and was finally paying off my student loans. I'd distanced myself from my family's dysfunction, visiting only on major holidays and maintaining what therapists call healthy boundaries. Then the diagnosis came, stage 2 breast cancer. I remember sitting in that sterile examination room, the doctor's words fading into white noise as I stared at the scan. Even with insurance, the treatment would cost tens of thousands of dollars. I'd need time off work. My modest emergency fund wouldn't come close to covering it. That evening, I did something I swore I'd never do. I called my parents for help. $50,000? My father's voice echoed through the phone. Emily, that's a lot of money. I swallowed my pride. I know, Dad. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't. We'll need to talk about it, my mother interjected. Call us next week. When they called back, their voices had that forced cheerfulness that immediately set off alarm bells. They couldn't help. They'd just given Jason $50,000 to start his entrepreneurial journey. They were so proud of him for finally finding his passion. What exactly is this business? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. It's in the hospitality industry, my father said vaguely. Entertainment, networking, that sort of thing. I later learned this meant Jason had convinced them he was going to open an upscale sports bar. My brother, who had never held a job for longer than 6 months. Who had been fired from waiting tables for showing up drunk. Who had moved back home 3 times in his 20s because he needed to regroup. I have cancer, I said flatly. This isn't a business venture or a vacation. I need this to live. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Emmy, my mother finally said, using my childhood nickname, we just don't have it to give right now. But we're here for you emotionally. Completely. I hung up and cried until I couldn't breathe. I ended up taking out a medical loan with horrific interest rates. My friends organized a GoFundMe that covered about a quarter of the costs. I started treatment, lost my hair, and worked remotely between bouts of nausea and exhaustion. My parents called occasionally, asking how I was doing but never mentioning money again. Jason, meanwhile, never called once. It was during one particularly bad night, when the pain kept me awake and the financial anxiety made sleep impossible, that I found myself scrolling through Instagram. And there he was, with my brother, posting a story from what looked like a high-end nightclub. The caption read, Business Research. #entrepreneur life, #grind never stops. I stared at my screen. He was holding a bottle of champagne with a sparkler in it. The timestamp showed it was 2 a.m. on a Wednesday. Something cold and calculating took over. If my brother was researching, I should probably keep track of his progress, right? For the family investment, I created a fake Instagram account and started following not just Jason, but his friends too. I set up notifications for their stories and posts. I became a digital ghost, watching my brother's life unfold through social media, and what I saw made me physically ill. There were the trips to Atlantic City, the new designer clothes, the business dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, the leased BMW he called his client impression vehicle. Through his friends' less filtered posts, I saw the gambling, the bottle service, the nights that clearly ended with substances stronger than alcohol. Most damning were the location tags. This business seemed to involve a surprising amount of time at casinos, clubs, and luxury hotels, and exactly zero time looking at commercial real estate, meeting with suppliers, or doing anything remotely related to opening a sports bar. But I needed proof my parents couldn't deny. Screenshots weren't enough, they could claim they were edited or taken out of context. I needed something irrefutable. 3 months into my treatment, my parents invited me to their home for dinner. "You need a good home-cooked meal," my mother insisted. "You're looking so thin on our video calls." I accepted, partly because I was too exhausted to cook for myself, and partly because I needed to advance my plan. Jason would be there too. Perfect. I arrived early, bearing a small gift, a digital picture frame for my mother. "I've already loaded some family photos on it," I told her as she unwrapped it. "And it's got Wi-Fi, so you can add more from your phone anytime." What I didn't mention was that I'd also paired it with my own phone. I could remotely upload images to it anytime. Dinner was awkward. My parents avoided any mention of money or my treatment costs. Jason arrived late, reeking of expensive cologne and talking loudly about some investors he was meeting next week. I noticed his new watch, a Rolex, unless I missed my guess, but said nothing. I picked at my food while he devoured seconds and thirds. "How's the business going?" I asked innocently. "Amazing," he boasted. "I've been networking like crazy." Building the right relationships is key in the hospitality industry. "Found a location yet?" He waved dismissively. "Working on it. These things take time if you want the right spot." I nodded, looking appropriately impressed. "And the business plan? You securing funding beyond mom and dad?" Something flashed in his eyes, irritation, maybe a touch of panic. "It's all coming together. You wouldn't understand the complexities." "You're right," I said softly. "I'm just focused on surviving right now." The table went silent. My mother quickly changed the subject, asking if anyone wanted dessert. As I was leaving, Jason got a text that made him smile. "Gotta run," he announced. "Meeting potential partners for drinks." "On a Tuesday at 9 p.m.? I asked. He shot me a look. "The hospitality industry runs on different hours, Em." I smiled thinly. "Of course. Good luck." After he left, I hugged my parents goodbye. "Thanks for dinner. The picture frame is fully set up, by the way. Check it out tomorrow, it cycles through new pictures every few hours." Over the next 2 months, I gathered evidence methodically. I set up alerts for Jason's credit card payments through a shared family account he'd forgotten to remove me from years ago. I convinced one of his friends, who'd always had a crush on me, to share location data when they went out together. I even hired a college student on TaskRabbit to take photos at specific locations when I knew Jason would be there. Every receipt for bottle service, every casino chip purchase, every valet ticket for the BMW at 4 a.m. outside clubs. I documented it all. I organized everything chronologically in a secure cloud folder. Screenshots of his social media posts placed side by side with corresponding bank transactions. Geotagged photos matched with his business meeting calendar events he'd shared with our parents. The total amount spent, $47,635 in less than 4 months. No business license applications. No real estate viewings. Not even a drafted business plan. Meanwhile, I finished my second round of chemo. My doctor was cautiously optimistic, but recommended a third round to be certain. The bills kept coming. I took on freelance work despite barely being able to stay awake for more than a few hours at a time. My hair had started to grow back in patchy clumps, and then came the event that would set everything in motion: my parents' 40th anniversary party. My parents had been planning this celebration for months. 40 years of marriage was no small achievement, and they'd invited everyone: family, friends, colleagues, neighbors. It was to be held in their backyard, with catered food and a small band. My mother had even hired a photographer, offered to help with the digital aspects, creating the online invitation, coordinating the music playlist, and setting up a slideshow of family memories to play during the event. "That would be wonderful, Emmy," my mother said, genuinely touched. "You've always been so good with that tech stuff." I spent weeks selecting photos, creating touching montages of their life together. The show would play on the large outdoor screen they'd rented, as well as on various tablets placed around the party. And, of course, on the digital picture frame in the living room, where people would be dropping off gifts. Jason was supposed to help with the setup, but predictably, he was running late on the day of the party. "Traffic," he texted our family group chat. "Be there ASAP." I arrived early, dressed carefully to hide my thinness, a scarf artfully arranged over my still regrowing hair. I hugged my parents, set up my laptop, and connected it to all the display devices. "Everything's ready to go," I told my mother. "The slideshow will start automatically at 7 p.m. What I didn't tell her was that I've created two versions of the slideshow. The first, wholesome, sentimental, exactly what they expected, would play for exactly 10 minutes. Then, timed perfectly to when dinner would be served and everyone would be seated with their attention on the displays, it would transition to my carefully curated collection of Jason's business research. The party was in full swing by 6:30. Friends and family from across the country mingled in the backyard, admiring the flower arrangements and congratulating my parents. Jason arrived at 6:45, making a theatrical entrance with an oversized gift and immediately becoming the center of attention. Watched him work the crowd, charming everyone as usual. He hadn't seen me yet, tucked away in the corner where I was monitoring my laptop. My hands were trembling, but not from the chemo this time. From anticipation. At 7 p.m. sharp, the displays flickered to life. The first part of the slideshow began: my parents' wedding photos, family vacations, holiday gatherings. People oohed and awed. My mother wiped away tears. Jason caught my eye across the yard and raised his champagne glass in acknowledgement. I nodded back, my face carefully neutral. The caterers began serving dinner at 7:05. By 7:10, everyone was seated, plates in front of them, glasses filled, attention casually directed at the continuing slideshow. At precisely 7 hours 10 minutes and 30 seconds, all the screens transitioned to a new image. Jason at the Bellagio in Las Vegas, dated 2 weeks after my parents gave him the money, throwing chips onto a roulette table. There was a moment of confused silence. The next image appeared: a receipt for a $4,000 bottle service at a high-end New York club, Jason's signature clearly visible, dated during the week he'd told our parents he was meeting with suppliers. Then, Jason and a group of friends in the VIP section of a Miami nightclub, dated during his supposed business conference. A bank statement showing a $3,200 withdrawal from a casino ATM. A purchase receipt for the Rolex. A hotel bill for a weekend in Atlantic City, including several $1,000s in room charges. Each image remained on screen for just 6 seconds, long enough to register, not long enough for anyone to react quickly enough to stop it. Finally looked over at my parents. My father's face had gone from confused to ashen. My mother's hand was pressed against her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Jason was frozen, champagne glass halfway to his lips, staring at the screens in horror. Then came the final slide, my latest medical bill, with a simple caption: "While I was fighting for my life, Jason was living his best life with our parents' money." The silence that followed was absolute. Jason recovered first. "What the fuck, Emily?" he shouted, standing so abruptly his chair toppled backward. I stood as well, suddenly conscious of dozens of eyes on me. My voice was shaking but clear. "I just thought everyone should see what a $50,000 business investment actually looks like." "You psychotic bitch," he hissed, storming toward me. "You've been spying on me?" My father's voice cut through the tension. Jason. Is this true? Jason turned, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Dad, she's manipulating you. Those images are taken out of context. Is that your signature on that bottle service receipt? My father persisted. I was entertaining clients. What clients? I interjected. Name one. He couldn't. My mother was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. Friends and relatives were whispering, some discreetly leaving, others too shocked or morbidly fascinated to move. Mom, Dad, Jason tried again, his voice taking on the cajoling tone he'd always used to get out of trouble. I can explain everything. Emily's not giving you the full picture. She's always been jealous of me. I laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that surprised even me. Jealous? Of what? Your ability to manipulate our parents? Your talent for burning through their retirement savings while I can barely afford to stay alive? I pulled off my scarf, revealing my patchy, post-chemo hair. Several guests gasped. I asked them for help with my cancer treatment, I said, addressing the room now. They said they couldn't afford it because they'd given Jason $50,000 for his business. This is what he did with it. My father stood up slowly. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. Everyone, please excuse us. This is a family matter. People began to leave quickly, murmuring apologies and avoiding eye contact. Within minutes, only the four of us remained in the backyard, surrounded by half-eaten food and abandoned drinks. My father turned to Jason. Give me your car keys. What? Dad, come on, the keys to the BMW. Now. Jason's face crumpled. He fished the keys from his pocket and handed them over without another word. Go home, my father said. We'll discuss this tomorrow. But, Gio. Jason left, calling an Uber from the driveway. My mother had collapsed into a chair, sobbing openly now. My father turned to me next. Emily. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, I replied, gathering my laptop. I've said it all for you. I started to leave, but my mother's voice stopped me. Emmy, wait. I turned. She looked destroyed, her makeup streaked, her careful hairstyle coming undone as she ran shaking hands through it. Was it really $43,000? Your medical bills? I nodded. Plus another $14,000 since then. The third round of chemo starts next week. My father took a deep breath. We'll pay it. All of it. And we'll get the money back from Jason, my mother added, a new hardness in her voice I'd never heard before. How? He's spent it all. He has assets, my father said grimly. The watch, for starters. And he still owns his condo. I felt suddenly exhausted, the adrenaline of the confrontation leaving me in a rush. I need to go home. My father nodded. I'll drive you. The drive back to my apartment was mostly silent. Just before we arrived, my father cleared his throat. I failed you, he said simply. We both did. I don't expect you to forgive us anytime soon. I stared out the window. I don't know if I can. I understand. But I want you to know, what happened tonight opened my eyes. To a lot of things. He helped me up to my apartment, promised to call tomorrow, and left. I collapsed onto my couch, physically and emotionally drained. The next morning, my phone was flooded with messages. Family members expressing shock and support. Friends who'd heard about the anniversary party drama checking if I was okay. Even a few of Jason's friends, saying they had no idea about my cancer or that he was spending his parents' money and why mother called around noon. We've spoken with Jason, she said, her voice raw from crying. He admitted everything. Your father's taking him to sell the watch and anything else of value today. We've already transferred $30,000 to your account. The rest will come when we liquidate some investments. Mom, no, let me finish. I keep thinking about all the times you needed us and we weren't there. All the times we favored Jason because he seemed to need us more. We were wrong, Emmy. So terribly wrong. I didn't know how to respond. Your father's talking to a therapist. I am too. Separately. We have a lot to work through. What about Jason? She sighed heavily. He's moving out of his condo. We're selling it. He's finding his own apartment, and your father's using his connections to get him an entry-level job at his friend's company. No family money, no safety net. And mandatory financial counseling. Do you think he'll change? I don't know, she admitted. But we're not enabling him anymore. 2 days later, I received a text from Jason, I'm sorry. Just that. No excuses, no justifications. Maybe it was a start, or maybe it was just another manipulation. Time would tell. My final scan came back clear. The cancer was in remission. I'd finished treatment, paid off my medical debt with my parents' help, and even managed to keep my job thanks to a surprisingly understanding boss. My relationship with my parents had entered a new phase, not fully healed, but no longer broken beyond repair. They called regularly, visited without being invited, and never once mentioned the financial burden of my treatment. They'd started therapy, both individually and as a couple, and were slowly untangling decades of dysfunctional family dynamics. Jason and I maintained a cautious distance. He was working a regular job for the first time in his life, living in a modest apartment, and by all accounts actually trying. He'd reached out a few times, awkward attempts at reconciliation that I neither encouraged nor rebuffed. Some wounds take longer to heal than others. As for me, I started a blog about my experience, not just the cancer, but the family betrayal and eventual reconciliation. It resonated with people in ways I never expected. Turns out, the golden child dynamic exists in many families, often hidden behind closed doors until a crisis brings it to light. Why parents read every post, never complaining even when my words painted them in a harsh light. It's your truth, my father said. We need to hear it. The digital picture frame still sits in their living room. Sometimes, when I visit, I catch my mother staring at it with a faraway look in her eyes. The slideshow now displays only actual family memories, holidays, birthdays, gatherings, but she knows what else it once revealed. Last week, at a small dinner celebrating my remission, my father raised his glass for a toast. To Emily, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Who taught us that true family means being there when it matters most? Who had the courage to show us our failures when we couldn't see them ourselves? And who gave us a second chance we didn't deserve? I lifted my glass, meeting his eyes. To second chances, I replied. And to the truth, however painful it might be. Because that's the thing about family secrets, they fester in darkness but lose their power in the light. Sometimes it takes a crisis, a confrontation, or even a deliberately sabotaged anniversary party to bring that light, and sometimes, just sometimes, what emerges from the ashes is stronger than what came before. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced family favoritism or had to confront loved ones with difficult truths? Share your experiences below, and don't forget to subscribe to hear more stories of family dynamics, personal growth, and the complicated journey toward healing. New episodes every Wednesday. Your support means everything.